Joe?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. I won't say it. Be nice to have 5 people, but. Public comment period. Anybody have any public comments? Anything to add? Any correspondence? Seeing none. The approval of the minutes for the December 15th meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, second by me. Any questions on the minutes?
No, other than in one place it suggests that I was there and I was not. At the end. Somewhere.
This one is
I was taking minutes, I suppose.
Oh,
That would have been,
the last motion.
that would have been my mistake. So noted. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Some, introduction and approval.
Good morning.
Steve, morning.
I'd like to introduce Jenna Manson. Jenna, stand up, please. Jenna comes to us from the Wausau area where she worked for Safer and Riverside Fire District as a firefighter EMT. She started on Monday, January 10th on her 2 weeks days. Be navigating those 2 weeks of days with FTOs throughout the 2 weeks. She'll be assigned to Red Shift on January 26th. And she's already conducted her, Jenna conducted her paramedic ride-alongs here at the department, so the crews are familiar with her, and really had nothing but good things to say when she rode along with us earlier. So with that, I ask for your approval to hire Jenna Manson, firefighter EMT.
Entertain a motion by me,
I'll make the motion.
second by Keel. Any questions? A roll call, please.
Pinker?
Yes.
Meek?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes. Welcome.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item is fire service law enforcement news updates. Mr. Pinker.
I have a number of items for you this morning. The first set is from the Station Design Awards edition from Firehouse Magazine, and I've included 3 items here. One is rather unique. That's the first one from Panama City, Florida. They had a number of fire stations damaged by hurricanes, and they used a novel technique. They used a framework with the stretchable surfaces on them as temporary fire stations. In the picture that you see, top left, I believe the trailer is serving as temporary living quarters. So as a structure is built, they take this down and they move it to the next site where they've got to rebuild. So erection of these is very rapid, and then they've got this to provide temporary quarters for during other constructions. The next one is from Houston, Texas. I included this one simply because of its design. It's all square, it's all boxes, everything was put together with precast concrete walls. So it was basically like putting together Legos. And you can see the description there as to what they did on the side. The cost per square foot, and these have been going up every year that they've been doing these design awards, you see is $450. I don't know whether that's geographic or whether that's something that represents the true cost. I think this one is unique because it's something that can be done rapidly. Next page, this is a shared public safety facility from Massachusetts. where they have both the police department and the fire department in one building. I bring this to your attention because sometime in the future, we're going to be looking at replacement for our police department building. If we would ever have the opportunity to move to the north side, this is something where you could have a smaller fire station plus the police station attached to that. Likewise, if you go back to the other page, if you're looking for a small unit, the second fire station, perhaps on the north side, something like this with the precast construction would potentially be feasible. Next item, to show that citizens do care for the police. An incident occurred in South Carolina in which an off-duty officer working security at I believe it was a Walmart, was attacked, unprovoked attack. I don't recall whether from the fuller description, whether this was a patron or somebody who just came into the store. And as you can see, the number of citizens, I think at the end, there were 7 or 8 citizens that helped subdue the attacker. And 4 of those received rewards from the police department. The last item, Minnesota, or the Michigan State Police have completed their vehicle test for 2022. This indicates the vehicles that they tested. I know the last meeting, Mike had expressed how impressed he was with the acceleration of the county cars. In this year's test, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, Mike, 0 to 60 in 4.03 seconds. 0 to 100 in 11.94 seconds. Their police interceptor utility, the Ford, with the EcoBoost engine, is 5.5 seconds. And that full report should be online if you search out Michigan State Police vehicle tests. City of New York, and this is just a supplement to this. The City of New York is purchasing 184 Ford Mustang Mach-E's, sport utility crossovers. They're looking at those with a 270-mile range. They're impressed by 27 cubic feet of storage. And they do have charging stations in place for both long charge and rapid charge. And these can be used by NYPD, the Department of Corrections, New York City Sheriff's Office, Emergency Management, and Medical Examiner. And they are currently NYPD is currently seeking approval to purchase 250 Tesla number 3 sedans, an estimated cost of $12.36 million. And the last item, federal funds are going to good use. Metro Nashville is using $9 million of stimulus funds to pick up 128 work vehicles for Metro Nashville, 10 pickup trucks for Nashville DOT, and 4 vehicles for the county sheriff's office. And that's the update.
Thank you. Doesn't say that the Mustang comes on convertible walnut.
Nope, doesn't say that.
Red. Okay. Thank you. I have to go back to the correspondence because of the public comments. The question was asked this morning if our 5th commissioner was approved last night. In fact, it was not. Vote was 5-5. Of course, nobody offers an explanation of why they vote the way they do. I guess we're not entitled to any of that kind of information, but I was a little disappointed myself. I didn't know anybody more qualified for the position, but it's not our place to approve or disapprove of commissioners, only that you can hold your positions as commissioners in high esteem because you gotta be able to walk on water to be a commissioner, so currently we do, so here we are. We're gonna use that 5th person. It's been 5 months now, and I was so looking forward to being able to add a fifth person so we can move on with business that we have at hand. Hired 2 chiefs and other important stuff that we gotta deal with every day. So it's gotta be disappointing for the individuals who put their names out there to serve the community and be shot down 5 to 5. In the absence of a mayor, there was no broken tie. So it just died right there on the spot. So all I can guess is that he was overqualified. One person did offer an explanation to me afterwards that said that we'd be a little heavy if 2 retired law enforcement officers on our commission. So that's all I can offer right now without my own feelings about it. So that's the point. We'll wait some more for another commissioner. So. Next item is approval of police department bills. Chief.
All right, good morning. You have one set of bills in front of you that was approved by Commissioner Pinker on the 22nd of December. There are 2 things I'd like to point out. One is on 7C, it's a bill to advance disposal. And that is in the amount of $1,716.74 and $128.40. And the second is Liberty Tire, and that is on page 7E for $1,240.35. For some time, probably I would say the last 10, 15 years, we've had a problem at our range. I don't know how many of you have been out there. Steve, you're well aware of this. There was a structure that was originally built out there as a backdrop for shooting. And it was a large structure, and over the years, the pillars that hold this thing up, it was a roof, it was shingled, it had rock in it, deteriorated to the point where it was falling down, so that had to be removed. So we worked with City Garage. They actually went down there, they took the structure down, they took it out to advanced disposal, and that would be the cost that went to that of the 7 loads that it took to get rid of that. The other issue we had is we had a pile of, I want to say around 20 to 25 large tires that have been sitting there right down at the base of the range for as long as I can remember, and I've been here over 24 years. Those had to go, so that was another thing that City Garage helped us with. They transported those out of there for no cost to us, but the cost to Liberty Tire was at cost on 70. So they're really things that should have been done many years ago, and it got to the point where we couldn't do anymore. So that's really the only thing that stood out to me as noteworthy, but with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, and would look for your approval.
Entertain a motion to approve. Police department bills.
By Steve.
Steve, second. By Pinker. Any questions?
Yeah, just more because I don't understand than anything else. So $482.62. On page 7D over vacuum. What is that about?
They replaced a vacuum cleaner that was shot at the police department. And my understanding is that actually had to be sent back, and they're sending a new one because it didn't work. So I believe that's what that's for, looking at the short version.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And then we sent it again.
yeah, so there would be the credit back on the 462.
Yeah.
62.
And then the Celebrate on 7F subscription. That's
Celebrate's that's a program that's used to extract information from cell phones for the Detective Bureau.
all right. Putting it under subscriptions in effect. In my head, it's a mislabeling. It's not a subscription as the Popular Mechanics.
The Celebrate?
Well, calling it a subscription doesn't fit my head.
Yeah, and my assumption is it's always been placed there because it's a renewable
Yeah.
subscription to a program, so.
And then the last thing I'll ask, the Baltus building is, you've got payment for the Baltus building. Have we all, am I the only one, I guess, who hasn't been through that building? The commission should go through that building one of these near days, so we know what's in it and how you're using it and what benefit we get from it and so on.
Yeah, I think the benefit there would be, as I think Mr. Pinker alluded to earlier, when you start looking at a new police department,
Yeah.
that's really gonna give you a visual of the type of space we'd be looking at least for some of the vehicles. I can tell you also that city garage is storing over the winter anywhere from 2 to 3 pieces of equipment in there, so any extra space we've kind of allocated to them.
I think it would be helpful if the commission went through it, so it was had some sense of what your needs are.
It's a good idea.
I want your range. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Pinker,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes.
Beal,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Next item is the fire department bills. Steve?
Thank you. So in front of you, you'll see one set of bills signed by Commissioner Pinker on December 22nd. I also have a couple items I'd like to bring your attention. On page 8D, we have a large bill for repairs to engine 2 in the amount of $5,795.26. Engine 2 is a 2008 Darley. It's been a solid and very heavily used engine here at the department for a while and was recently moved to reserve status when engine 3 went into service in late 2020. In 2021, when we had its annual testing, it did not pass the vacuum test or its pump test. So after getting into it and exploring the plumbing, they found several issues. The water level gauge sensor needed to be replaced, an electronic valve control failure for one of the 2.5 discharges. They had a water leak at the main drain. Discharges 1, 2, and 3 were all leaking. And the officer side intake was leaking. There's also a hole in one of the welds in the manifold which needed to be repaired. So although the bill is quite large, we're confident that the engine is now back up to snuff and it's a reliable reserve engine. Yeah. Any questions on that particular one? Okay. The next one I want to point out to you is on 8D. Also at the very bottom, it's a bill in the amount of $8,415 for a forcible entry door simulator. This is an item actually that I was involved in purchasing. It's going to help simulate forcible entry situations. The door can actually simulate just about every situation we might encounter for having to force a door open. This was one of the priority items that was named between the fire department and MSTC with our partnership, and was purchased with as part of the $25,000 in mid-state in our partnership is donated to the department. Other than that, I didn't see any other bills of note. I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Motion by Keel, second by Steve. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Steve, on 8B, Steri-Fab gallon and pint pack bed bug spray.
Yes, sir.
Are you having bed bug issues in the building?
We are not having it in the building, and that spray is to make sure that we do not have it in the building. We do regularly go on scenes as well as the police department where there are bed bugs present. We are very diligent about wiping everything down. In fact, so much so that we've set up a new shower area on the main floor, so if crews needed to change and shower when they got back, they would not have to walk through the building. So this is to clean out the rigs and wipe equipment down.
Okay. Did you say that there were bugs at the police department?
No.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's some, yeah,
I am real sensitive to this.
I'm sure there's some in there, it's an older building.
I'm sensitive to this because of the CDA.
Okay.
And that's a whole lot of living units and there are issues. And by the way, the CDA has their own device to heat an apartment to the level that it kills the bed bugs. If you should need to use that, I would think something could be arranged.
We actually have one. That was one of the items that I I budgeted and purchased already.
All right,
We have it available, again, if one of the departments needs it for use upstairs in our bedrooms. The original plan was to also use that in the apparatus, an ambulance when return.
yeah,
After consulting with Orkin, they did not recommend using the heat in the ambulances due to the sensitive electronics. So we have both now heat for certain situations and the sprays for all other situations.
no, when you've got 230 living units to think about, that doesn't become an issue. What else did I have? I thought the forced entry door situation was interesting.
It is, I'd be happy to show you guys, it's out on the floor after the meeting. It's a very, very stout prop. We did get some accessories where the police department can also use it for battering ram entry. So
Oh, okay.
it is a multi-use item.
Now, let's go to page 8C. Replace front brake pads and rotors for $771. What vehicle? Oh, that's an ambulance 95.
Yeah, that is our primary ambulance right now.
And you had to replace the rotors. They couldn't be,
Correct. The crews had noted a noise or any noise in there. We took it in right away, and the mechanic noted right away that the pads were already shot and it was already affected the rotors and need to be replaced.
all right. That's all I got for now. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the fire department bills?
See, I had too much time.
I'm happy to answer questions.
Roll call, please, on approval of the fire department bills.
Pinker,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Police department activities, chief.
All right, there's one thing I'd like to point out on 9B. That is on December 17th, our new K-9 SO. And Officer Ament, who is his handler, got back from their training in Indiana and are now in service. So we are very excited to have him on board and look forward to great things. So she's also very excited. I think we're going to see really good things out of the K-9 program. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions and we'll look for these to be placed on file.
How many canines do we currently have?
2.
Two. How many of those group?
It's not more than 2 if they have 2.
Okay.
There might be one, I don't know for sure if they have 2, but I don't believe it's more than 2.
So, not that we're gonna need literally a whole kennel, but we have the 2 at Marshfield. Wood County's got the 2. Spencer still have 1?
Yep.
Okay, so Spencer's got the 1. And I think Colby Abbotsford's got 1 or 2.
That I don't know.
And what about Clark? You know?
I don't know if Clark County has a dog.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on police department activities? Seeing none, we'll place those on file. Thanks, chief. This is an information thing, accept and approve the retirement of records specialist Chris Stargardt.
All right. It's with regret that I'm going to announce that police records specialist Chris Stargardt has submitted a retirement notice to the city on 12/16/21 with her last official workday of February 22nd, 2022. A little bit about Chris. She came to work for the city back on March 7th, 1994 as a telecommunicator dispatcher. As a dispatcher, she was trained as a validation officer and as a communications training officer. And then at that point, when the city's dispatch center closed down on 9/30/06, she continued to work as a dispatcher down with the Wood County Shared Dispatch Center. She ended up coming back to Marshfield, which is something she always wanted to do, and applied for the open police record specialist on 1/2/09. So with her retirement on 2/22/22, she'll have almost 28 years as a committed public servant for the citizens of Marshfield and Wood County. like to say that Chris has been an exemplary employee. She's always been friendly. She's going to be sorely missed up there. So with that, I don't know that this needs a formal approval of any type because she's a civilian personnel, but I'm going to ask for it anyways. So with that, I would ask for you to accept her retirement.
Move to accept Chris's retirement.
Motion by Keel,
Seconded.
second by Lee. To accept her retirement. Are there any questions?
Well, can I add to that we accept with regret? I know her a little bit, and I think she's really a fine person and done a fine job.
I would agree.
I feel the same way. It's a smiley face that you meet when you come in the door, and she's done a good job. Done a good job. She did when she was a dispatcher too, so it was nice to see her come back to the department. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Guess we should have done a roll call. Approve the request to replace the record specialist position, Chief.
With that, I would look to have your approval to fill this position, after which if I receive that, I'll put that on the agenda for the next finance, budget, and personnel meeting to get their approval, and then we'll move forward. We do have some applicants that we may be reaching out to, as our list is under a year old. There were some very good applicants on that list, so, but I'll keep you informed as far as the direction we go with that.
Okay.
Move to approve the request.
Motion to approve the request, second by Steve. Again, this is a civilian position, but we're spending the money that the council so graciously gives us every year. And it does fall underneath the chief's realm, so, and for information purposes, we'll move forward with that. Roll call, please.
Pinker,
Yes.
Meek,
Yes.
Keel,
Yes.
Myers.
Yes. And an SRT update, Chief.
All right, there's been no approval or any type of formal request for this yet, but several months ago, we did bring forward, and Lieutenant Esser and Lieutenant Sheridan have really been spearheading this, the concept of a joint SRT, or Special Response Team, for Wood County. At this time, I just want to give a little bit of an update on where that exploration is. In your package, you have a memorandum of understanding that up to this point has been reviewed by 3 respective departments' legal teams, city attorneys. They don't really have any issues with that. My intent today was just to kind of give you an update. What I'd like to have is to put this on the agenda for February 9th. It gives you more time to go through that memorandum of understanding. I'll also have Lieutenant Sheridan and Lieutenant Esser here to really kind of dig into that and answer any questions as far as how they came to this memorandum of understanding. They worked with commanders from all 3 departments. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions as far as why I feel this is a benefit, but I think it'd be very valuable for you to have those 2 individuals here to tell you where the actual components of this MOU came from. Just before Christmas, I met with Sheriff Becker and Chief Blevins of Wisconsin Rapids. Actually, yesterday morning, I received a few updates to that memorandum of understanding, nothing major. So I'll put those up for the February meeting. Would hope to put that on the agenda and probably dive into that a little deeper and look for your approval at that point. So with that, that's where we're sitting. All the departments believe this is a go. They believe it's better for the county and all the communities. One thing I will point out is there really isn't any type of a budgetary impact whatsoever, because all the departments as of 2022 are operating under their already approved SRT budgets and the department budgets. So one of the discussions was there may be a slight impact to the 2023 request, as we would all put some level of money in there to cover training and things like that. So that's really my goal today, was to just provide an update and get this on the agenda for February for a more in-depth discussion, a question and answer period, and a possible approval at that point.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andy.
All right. Has there been any discussion or thought given to procuring equipment centrally So does everyone have an armored vehicle?
Wood County and Marshfield have armored vehicles, so we would have two of them.
Okay. That's my phone. If you don't mind, I'm gonna ignore it.
I'm good with that.
Let me give a little backstory. I was once involved with a consortium among 3 universities. And the decision was it was silly for all 3 universities that were basically a mile apart to all have chem abstracts, which was at that time $25,000 a year. So one campus got chem abstracts and the other 2 didn't because we didn't need 3 of them. There had to be 1 among the 3, but we didn't need 3 of them. And that held for all of the library building, all of the collection building in the libraries. I would order a book and I'd get a note saying, we don't have that book, but they do, we'll have it tomorrow morning. The collection was built commonly. Saved money, was lots of good reasons for doing that. Is there any thought about bringing that kind of synergy together for the SRT groups?
Yeah, I think that's kind of at its core, is that you have 3 very similar sized agencies operating with 3 very similar sized SWAT teams. So what you have is a pooling of resources. So for instance, some of the budgetary money that goes in each year, and it really would not take much, would cover joint chemical munitions, potentially ammo. So what you'll probably see, and again, this is hypothetical at this point, but this is what I believe, and that's why you'll probably see our ammo budget go down, because what we would look to then is move a portion of that bigger ammo budget into this joint SRT budget that all the teams are covering. So really, it's when you look at the types of things our SWAT team can independently handle, there isn't many. Low-level search warrants, anything other than that, even the incident that we had in December required additional support. So this is really a concept that's been around for forever. Marathon's been operating on a joint SWAT team. Most counties that I know are operating on a joint SWAT team, so I think we're a little behind the curve on it. But yeah, to answer your questions, it would be a complete pooling of resources.
Yeah, okay, so, thank you.
Any other questions?
Right, on the front page, 12A, on the abbreviations, I'm going to assume TL means team leader and ATL is assistant team leader.
Right.
Okay. Then, this is on page 12E. And I'm going to do Andy Keough on this one. Third line up, last word, and this is equipment. Is this Halligan or is this a hooligan?
It's technically called a Halligan, like a big crowbar.
Yeah. I was just curious about that. The Australians call Halligans hooligans. And
Other words for hooligans.
Whether we were crossing over here at all. Are there any memos of understanding, other types of agreements with area fire departments who might be responding?
There is not to my knowledge. That would probably be a question for Steve as far as if they get into anybody. Now, one of the interesting things that we've looked at over the years that's been tabled is TEMS, which is a tactical EMS. And we've looked at that with the fire department for many years. What we kind of ended up with was in the middle with our rescue task force. Yeah, our rescue task force kind of took the place of that. So.
Okay. I'll ask Steve a parallel question. Do our rigs have ballistic vests?
Not all of them. So we had, I want to say 4 sets that we received from the police department years ago for the rescue task force. This last year I purchased another 4 sets. So we have 8 sets of ballistic gear for the rescue task force. We're currently looking to keep 2 sets on the first ambulance because it's more likely to respond to an incident right away. And the other set's back here at the station, so whatever response we had, the crews could grab them.
Okay. Thank you.
A number of questions. Do you know if Rapids or the county has a crisis negotiation team
Yes.
phone?
A phone? No, to my knowledge, we're the only one that has a rescue phone like what we have. Again, I can't guarantee that, but that's because what has happened, and I think, well, you know this as good as anybody, Steve, our negotiators started training with the county on a regular basis some time ago, and a lot of it was because of that, so.
So within 12C, it talks about the equipment, and I'm just going to use that phone system as an example. Being that Marshfield PD owns that, we're to maintain that equipment. There's no limit as to how long we would have to maintain that piece of equipment or any other piece of equipment that we bring to this group. Likewise, the same for the other departments. Could there be like a moratorium over the time frame set in place? Because everything has a life.
Right.
Okay, and for the city of Marshfield to pay, I don't know if that was a $10,000 to $20,000 piece of equipment, it's pretty expensive. We'd be bringing that to the table amongst other things. I don't think Rapids had one of those phones. I believe Wood County had one, but it was really old. So that's just one example that I have concerns on.
I guess if I could, just so I understand, the concern is that we're bringing more.
Some things each department would be bringing more than another department maybe, but that's an example of what I would be concerned of. Shelf life as far as the length of serviceable equipment we'd be bringing to the table, and once that expected life would end, would we have to go out and buy another, or would this be included in the budget?
That would be included in the budget, in the joint SRT budget.
Right, that's it. Then response times. I have a concern about response times. It's hard enough to get people to come in to work the road when they're off duty at times for one reason or another. And when you need a group of people to come out and go to a crisis situation of some type, what would the response time be for that? And has this group thought about doing any kind of mock scenario a number of times to kind of try and figure that out?
I think that those would be things that would happen over the course of this year. There's going to be a learning curve. And I think the biggest theory on my end is that when you talk about a lack of people to come in, we struggle with that every day. So our bigger pool is going to draw more people. As far as having the number that you can see in that MOU is for the number of, for instance, operators or snipers. So we're increasing our pool. As far as a time frame, there could always be a time frame. I think geographically, you're going to look to draw from those areas that are closest. For instance, the issue that we had last December, we did end up having a second ARV, which was Wood County's come to that scene. So barring, if it's an emergent situation, obviously you're talking something like that the dynamics change and we, it becomes active. So I understand what you're saying, but I think those are things that would be ironed out over the course of this year to test those types of things.
Another question I have is training locations. Where would the training be? Would it rotate around so that everybody shares the expense of manpower going from one end of the county to the next?
Right. It opens up the whole county as basically a training ground. So.
And where would we store equipment? Like the great big vehicle that we have, the TAC vehicle?
We would still store that as we would if we didn't have a joint SRT. So that's currently at the Baldus building. So there's no thought as far as anything of a joint storage location, because there is benefit to having an ARV on the south side and one on the north side. So nothing like that would change.
That's it. Thank you. Good.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. We'll look forward to an update in February. I'll put that on the agenda. February meeting. Fire department activities, training reports, and correspondence. Steve.
Okay, so a few items on December 2nd of 21, Deputy Chief Letty attended the State of Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services meeting held at 6 p.m. in Pittsville. This meeting is focused on the requirements set forth by the state for responsibilities of the fire chief, training, inspections, record keeping, and other requirements. So this is a meeting that was held in several spots around the state. Deputy Chief Letty was able to attend in Pittsville. Also, the firefighter interviews were held on December 8th. We interviewed 4. Offer was made to the top candidate, and we are still waiting on pre-employment testing, along with other requirements to come back. Hope to have him start sometime in February. Provided everything works out with this candidate, our line firefighters would finally be fully staffed. The only position we would then have open is the chief position. On December 13th through 15th, we held our annual holiday get-together with the shifts. This included a potluck lunch with the fire department, bonding activities in the afternoon. Again, the participation was really well among all 3 shifts, so always good. And then finally, on December 16th, we hosted the class of the 2022 Leadership Marshfield group at the fire department as part of the safety day. It's always fun to have them in here. It gives us an opportunity to kind of showcase the department and all the specialties that we do. So with that, ask you to.
Any questions on the fire department activities?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We'll receive those and place them on file. Appreciate it. The only note I'll make is that there's 13 false alarms or 4 false card calls that month. It just never goes away. Next item is a discussion on the fire chief hiring process. We've got Jenna Manson with us this morning. I apologize for, I thought we'd be farther down the line before we got up on the agenda. This way you got an opportunity to see how the commission operates. Pleasure of having you here.
So at this point, what we need to do is just get your direction how you would like to have the fire chief recruitment handled. Last time I was here, we talked about the options. It was appointment of a current employee. It could be recruitment internally or externally through the resources department, or third, the ability to use an external third-party consultant for the hiring of the position. So it really falls to the commission's discretion in terms of which avenue you want to take. From the standpoint of option 2, internal and external recruitment, if that would be an option that you're looking for, we've had some changes internally. And so that option may no longer be on the table for now, or may be delayed if you wanted to do an internal or external recruitment through the human resources department.
We carried this over from last month, so we thought we'd get a better discussion with a complete complement of commissioners. So does anybody have some ideas on what direction you want to go with the hiring process for the fire chief? Obviously, we're in the middle of a police chief selection right now. Myself cannot see doing 2 at the same time, 2 chief positions. So as far as timeline, this one's gonna have to wait for the first one to finish, so that's my opinion. But I'll open it up for a discussion as far as how everybody feels about what direction you'd like to go with the fire chief position. You care to start off?
The situation in the fire department seems to me to be in a kind of fundamental way different than the police department. The circumstances and the context and so on are different. And to be straight about it, I'm not at all pleased with the service. I think people will remember that at the time it all started with the police chief search. I said I wanted somebody from the outside, and I realized last night for some reason, the key word is recruit. I wanted a consultant that would recruit candidates for the position. And that's not what we got, and apparently that's not the convention for searching for positions like police chiefs and fire chiefs. So I'm not much excited about hiring outside. I think Jen could have done what they did and as well or better for a lot less city resource. In the fire department, the circumstances are different, and to be honest, rather than go through what we're going through with the police chief, I just assume we look inside first, and if we can't find anyone that's satisfactory, then look outside, whether it's with a consultant or with internal support.
Okay. Bill?
I'll agree with Andy. I think the particular context that we're operating with this department is different than the police department. I tend to view a fire department as having Carol McCart was on the commission. She referred to it as a different sociology. A whole different aspect of operating. And from that perspective, and I agree with that perspective, and I think from that perspective, looking internally is perhaps the advantageous way to go. I think Andy brings up an interesting point about recruiting. And there's a difference between recruiting and searching. When we come down to it and everything is done, I think the McGrath people were searching, were casting a net, and not actively recruiting. So maybe an obvious difference in viewpoint between Andy and I think I've developed. The other thing is what type of pool do we have out there of people that are willing to come to a community of 20,000 to lead our department. If we look to the situation that was also when Chief Kujawa announced her retirement, they did a search. But at the end of the search, Deputy Chief Bartek was selected as chief. Though there were a lot of people up there that expected him to be selected anyway. But I don't know whether they actually did a search. They did a search. They didn't go out and recruit somebody. Though Steve would agree that when Chief Bartek was recruited to Wausau, there was an intent, so he was actually recruited for one position, or that's what it seemed to be. Internally, we have qualified personnel. I'm looking at, right now, our particular situation relative to manpower. We have people internally who know how to effectively utilize our manpower. I don't know whether we're ever going to get adequate funding to get 3, 6, or 9 additional firefighters. Just for reference, the Wausau City Council approved last night for the fire department to apply for a SAFER grant to fund 6 firefighters. And their on-duty personnel, probably at least 40 or 50 years, it hasn't increased very much. They do need the extra firefighters. And just like this department their EMT calls, you know, are like this, and their fire calls are like that. So they do need that extra personnel. I think we can recruit them within. If we're looking at going outside, it's very possible we can find people from Wisconsin that may want to move here. You may also find people from Northern Illinois. I believe they are fully pensioned. I think it's at 20 or 25 years. You could find somebody who's willing to move north to a less stressful environment. I think we do have the qualified people here. I would be in favor, or I will be in favor of doing an interim recruitment.
Steve, any ideas?
I'm in agreement with both Bill and Andy, as well as yourself, holding off on when this would possibly start. But I think it's a different situation from one department to the next. So I think that probably better to be handled inside than by Jen.
See, I wish I would have been part of the discussion when the commission moved forward with hiring the consultant for police department, police chief's job, because if you remember, I was in the hospital at that time. Because I wasn't here for the discussion on that, but I've been vocally against hiring someone to help us with this process, for the police department especially. I'm hesitant to move forward with having somebody help us with the fire department one as well. But I fail to see the difference in the two departments, and that we put as much energy and resources into training personnel in both departments. Much of the structure of the departments is made up of, or involves the encouragement of people to move towards advancements. We educate them, we pay them for their training in both departments. And we have people ready to take over in both departments, as we've seen with both the departments and their assistant chief positions, deputy chiefs positions. Have somebody step up when there's an opening. Both places are equal in that respect. And myself, quite honestly, would have been very comfortable with promoting from within. I've been part of several hiring processes and chief positions throughout the last, went back to 1982. And I don't think the departments are any better off with somebody from the outside. So I fail to see the value in recruiting from outside or encouraging anybody from the outside to come into the department. So I'm inclined, but now that we've moved ahead with the police department one process and the consultant, I don't know how we can move ahead with the fire chief position without going through the same process. There's value to doing that. If we're not going to recruit, then if we're going to search for somebody, there's value in that we could put our own people up against whatever else is out there. And in, say, in Wausau's case, they end up hiring from within anyhow, promoting from within. There's some value to that, and we maybe end up coming up with ideas through the process, because part of that involves through the interview process with prospective candidates, they may share ideas that we hadn't been aware of, or innovations, or, you know, we can glean a lot of information out of those interviews that we probably wouldn't get by just being inside. But I felt very strongly in both cases, both departments, that we had people inside that we could just merely promote. And I wish we would have gone that route, and I made no secret of it prior to that meeting that I wasn't able to attend, that I wasn't comfortable with hiring somebody to help us with the process, because I was assured that the city could handle the search, or whatever you want to call it, recruitment process. And I felt comfortable with that, and I was assured that we could. I've never seen any benefit to going outside with people helping us, because I think a prior one, I think 2014, we had a selection process and wasn't happy with the results, or not the results, but I wasn't happy with the assistance we received in that case. And I just hesitate hiring somebody to help us do that. But and so that leaves us, from what I just said, probably leaves us no better off than when I first started talking about it. But I just wanted to make clear how I felt about it. I wish there was a way we could change horses in the middle of the stream as far as the police department one, because that's the route I would prefer to take. But we're gonna do it now, and if we're gonna do it for the police department, I think we ought to do the same thing with the fire department, because there isn't anything different as far as the structure of the departments and what we're looking for in both departments. So if we went the long way around with the PD, I think we have to do the same thing with the fire department. But that's a decision the commission has to make. But I made it very clear how I feel about it. Do you want to argue with me?
Well, I don't believe, because we do a consultant, we have to do a consultant. I think we've enumerated a number of times that there's the feeling, consensus in the commission that we had. Oh, sorry. I believe we've enumerated a number of times there could be a consensus that we have a unique situation that we're dealing with the police department. And perhaps, you know, a consultant who deals with this area was better able to serve us in seeking somebody out. It's not the situation in the fire department. And because we do one, we're not establishing precedent for the other. I'm still in favor that we take a look inside. I would like to take a look inside as rapidly as possible. We shouldn't be leaving a department in limbo. And if we do a search, I think the process puts us in a position of limbo. But we can change that around with this one. What I would like to see at the February meeting would be a review, either at the February meeting or at February in a closed session for personnel issues, a review of internal candidates. That or direct appointment. Unless you were to do a direct appointment, it's not an agenda, so it probably would not be appropriate.
I have to ask the question then, what made the PD situation different? I mean, we have someone that stepped in immediately. He's been doing it, it'll be going on 2 years. So the situation there, what part of the situation makes it any different than what we have for the fire department?
If we look at operating the department, and we also, even though the operation of these departments is supposed to be non-political, formation of a commission was to keep politics out of the operation of the departments. The police department has become a political situation. And the fire department has not.
Mike, I would like to discuss some of the issues that you bring forward or you ask about, but not in open session.
Why not?
That should be obvious.
Because I'm sitting here.
No,
The public deserves the right to hear all.
no, it has to do with what in my mind has to do with personalities, has to do with individual behaviors, has to do with stuff that's been alluded to in the public forums. I just don't think everything should be in an open forum.
Right.
I think Andy raises a good point. And when I mentioned earlier that this has become a political situation, political situations involve personalities, it involves accusations, fact, falsehoods, and that should not be discussed openly. That would fall within the personnel, discussing the personnel issues.
I can see that if we're talking about individuals who are being considered being discussed in closed session, but the positions themselves and how we're gonna fill them should be an open discussion. How we go about hiring chiefs for the 2 positions.
That's fine.
That's what we're doing.
No, well, you wanted to go further than that.
No, I'm trying to discuss the difference, what is the difference politically between the 2 departments that would make the hiring process for one chief any different than hiring a chief for the other department? Same process.
We have a situation with the police department where it has become very political, where we have a former police chief who resigned but would have been terminated for his behaviors. We have issues within the police department that are unresolved. It is very different. It is not the same. And I don't think, to be honest with you, that the police department deserves to have all of that dragged out into the public.
I don't know if you're directing that to me. I don't know what you're referring to for unresolved, so maybe it is.
See, and that's why I think we need to talk about this in closed session.
No, and this is not my place to speak, but you're talking of things. I don't know what you're talking about as far as unresolved issues at the police department.
All right,
Those individuals are gone.
yeah, well, I tell you what, Abraham Lincoln died too, but we're still living with his consequences.
I understand. I've been living with those consequences for 1.5 years.
You know, and I think that makes things quite different.
And that's for you gentlemen to decide.
Yeah.
Okay, so what direction do you want to go? Jen, do you have any ideas
So
from
from
your perspective?
ultimately, it comes to the decision of this group. I think ultimately, I think there is some validity to a consistent process. I think there is also, an ability, as I've shared in the past, if you look to an external process, that there is a compare and contrast between candidates to ensure that you have the right person in the position going forward. So I I would say based on our current circumstances, I would not shy away from an internal and external process. I think that you've got very strong candidates internally. I think you also may have strong candidates externally, and I think it's good to have that comparison so that you make a decision that's right for this group. But that is ultimately the decision of this body.
Another, Bill mentioned too that we have to fill the fire chief's position in a hurry. I disagree with that. I don't think we're in any, I think we have it's in able hands right now. I cannot fathom doing 2 chief selections at the simultaneously. I think we have to get the police chief one off the table first.
Why can't we do 2?
Okay. I mean, it's rather overwhelming, in my mind at least, to hire 2 significant positions, for 2 completely different departments, at the same time, in my mind. Jen?
If I may, you may want to consider, we're midway through the police chief recruitment process. Now, we do have additional meetings coming up with that. You may want to consider delaying a decision today to better evaluate the process used by the consultant as we get through those meetings before you make a decision today on how you want to move forward with the police chief, and make sure that you fully understand what that full process looked like. Because again, we're only through the application stage at this point. We've not gone any further through that process. So I think those next meetings are going to be valuable, and I think that might help you in making your decision for the fire chief role.
Okay. So it'd be safe putting this on the agenda for the next meeting. Again, to move for direction on where to go with the fire chief. Or what is your pleasure?
Steve, what effect would delaying have on the people in the fire department? Anything?
Morale definitely would go down. There's frustration already among the crews, management. As Mike alluded to, the fire chief is a very significant role. We are covering right now. We covered for 3 months when Scott was out last year. The longer we delay, the harder it gets.
And was that where you got the idea that it was a hurry up thing?
I think it's in able hands right now. We have a full complement, as he mentioned, when we hire the next individual. We just got done interviewing, so that the troops themselves will be up to speed. It's in the command structure that we're gonna have problems. So we have the same problem in the.
Well, but I just heard Steve say that there's pressure on the deputies for filling in for all of the stuff that is undone because they're one short in the command structure.
I'd like to add one more thing, because I believe I made all of you aware, but early February I'll be going out with shoulder surgery, so I will be out for at least several weeks is what I'm being told. So that's another position down, which again, just more pressure to the other command staff.
All right. This doesn't appear to be an item that requires a motion. This is simply a discussion item. For the February meeting, I would like to see on the agenda a discussion of the fire chief hiring process, and/or appointment of a chief of department.
We'll have that on the agenda for the February meeting. Any other discussion on the fire chief selection process? Jen, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is that with the current motion to have further discussion and potentially appoint, you may want to consider whether or not, if you would choose to appoint, you may have more than one candidate within the fire department that are interested in that role. You wouldn't know that at this point, so you may want to consider whether or not, depending on what strategy you choose to go with for recruitment, whether or not you put it at minimum a posting out internally to see who may be interested to review potential candidates for that role. Right now you have an acting chief in place and you know, that is certainly within your purview, but there may be others that are interested that may feel slighted if they don't have an opportunity to at least share their interests.
So do that in the meantime.
I think that would be reasonable.
Okay, so we're going to post internally, and then discussion of the selection process and/or appointment.
Yeah, you know, it can, you know, the posting can say that the commission is in the process of examining how to select a new chief. And one of the things that would help us decide what to do is if we knew if there were people internally who would be interested in the position.
So in that case, you may just request maybe a letter of interest be sent to you versus a application or anything formal at this point versus a full, you know, internal recruitment process. So it may just be more of a letter of interest specific to the commission in regard to the phase 2 vacancy. Sorry, fire chief vacancy.
Right.
I have a question. It's been kind of mentioned that maybe an appointment be made at the next meeting, but yet we're gonna have how many ever that apply for the fire chief position. Shouldn't that probably go through a closed session? And then if there's a decision made, whether we move to appoint directly one of the candidates versus having that in an open forum. Because we'd be going over personnel records or whatever else.
I think the discussion on the process should be open, but if we, maybe prior to the possible appointment would have to obviously be closed.
I would recommend that you consider it as a multi-phased approach. So if you would choose to do a letter of interest internally to get that potential review, that would be only step one. And then that review would have to occur first to determine then what your selection process is. If you want to broaden it to an internal and external selection or just simply an internal selection at that point based on those scenarios, because then you would want to provide an opportunity for people to submit a resume and application and more of the detailed information that typically comes along through a recruitment process so that you can compare and contrast the candidates with similar interview questions and processes and procedures through that mode. But I think you may be putting too much in one meeting if you're looking to get a letter of interest and a potential appointment if that's what you choose to do in the same meeting.
Jennifer, can we, at this meeting right now, talk about the change in circumstance that will influence how we go about doing this?
You know, we can. I don't think it is. I think no matter what process you choose to do it, it may impact either way. What Mr. Keogh is referring to is the fact that I am accepting a position outside of the city, and I will be not leading that recruitment process for a fire chief going forward based on the timeline. So we would have to find another alternative or an external recruiter for that process.
All right, so at this point, I think we have a consensus that our consensus is all over the place for the time being. So going back to the February meeting, and I'll toss this out for discussion. Between now and then, we request letters of interest within the department. Letters of interest, letters of intent, however you want to word that. 2, then at the next meeting, via closed session, review those letters of intent. Then carry to the March meeting. And after review, I think we're at the position, formal application perhaps. And then decision making following that. Discussion.
What decision?
And then make it, after doing those reviews, then make a decision as to if there's going to be an internal appointment.
At that point is when we make a decision about whether it's internal or external. If we decide that we have applicants that are appropriate internally, we decide not to go external, and then we're left to select from internal candidates.
Right.
Well, I think that's basically what I suggested to begin with, is we look internally and decide where we stand. And if we're not satisfied, we go external.
And we should be able to get that done by
February meeting.
February meeting.
Okay, we'll be on the agenda for the February meeting. Anything to add, Jen? Any other items for the future meeting?
In March, Mike, I'd like to hear from both departments, how they're viewing the city growth patterns and any problems that you see, both in the immediate and future for coverage and response issues.
Something submitted from both departments?
Yeah.
And you want a written report, or would an oral report do?
Oral, verbal would be fine.
Okay, this is for the March meeting. Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. Hearing no objections, we're